My name is Frank Cowling and I'm here to talk about this little red book, Toe by Toe. Toe by Toe was created by Keita Cowling, a primary school teacher in the UK, and is the result of 25 years of painstaking research working with struggling readers of all ages. This is a very powerful tool and is now used all around the world, and it has spread by word of mouth, by recommendation. This is a very powerful, effective tool, but at first glance it may appear a little daunting. There are many pages of grids and ticks and dots, the use of nonsense words, but actually it's very simple. It's a very simple but powerful tool. It is simply a question of following the detailed instructions in the red coaching box referring to the facing page. And if you work your way methodically through the book to the end, your student will be able to read virtually anything. For optimal results, we recommend 15 to 20 minutes a day working with a student one-to-one. We are now going to go through a PowerPoint presentation which will cover the main points of the use of Toe by Toe and the Toe by Toe method. The Toe by Toe scheme works with struggling readers of all ages and has even been used in prisons in the UK and Australia, with literate prisoners teaching others how to read in the prison cell. As you can see, J.K. Rowling has been a great supporter of the use of Toe by Toe in this way. This photo shows Keita Cowling paying a visit to a primary school in Glasgow shortly after the publication of Toe by Toe. As you can see, we currently have two versions of Toe by Toe, a British version and an American version, which differs only in spelling and idiom. After checking that the student knows the letter sounds on page 11, we are ready to begin. As you can see on page 13, we put the date at the top of each column and work our way methodically down, testing that the student knows the sound associated with each of these symbols, i.e. the upper and lowercase letters. Now, before I begin talking about this page, I have to say something about the sounds that we use in Toe by Toe. The conventional wisdom when teaching these sounds is that you use the precise sound of the letter. So in the second column, for example, here it will be k, o, p, k, r, z, t, and so on. We disagree with this approach. We say it is far better and easier for the student and often for the tutor if you use the schwa. The schwa is the unstressed vowel sound. It's like a faint grunt, an sound. So for example, in the second column it will be m, k, o, p, qu, r, z, and so on. If you think about the precise sound of the letter N, which is n, and the precise sound of the letter L, which is n, it is difficult and it is much easier for the struggling reader to discriminate between the sounds if you use the schwa. So for example, the sound of the letter N, we would recommend using n. And the sound of the letter L, we would say l. And it is not a problem to blend together n, I, l to make nil. So that is our strong recommendation. Of course, if you wish to use the precise sound of the letters, then okay, do so. But as I say, this is our strong recommendation that you use the schwa. Put a tick in the box if they know the sound and a dot otherwise. They've seen plenty of crosses before in their school careers. If you are unsure of the recommended sounds to use, please click on the Nonsense Word Answers link on our website. At the end of this process, having finished all 5 columns, go back to any weaknesses and ask the student to say the correct sound 3 times whilst tracing the shape of the letter in the air with a finger. For example, B 3 times. I'll come back to why we do this later. Having finished the page using this methodical approach, you go on to the next page and do as many pages and or columns as you have time for in that particular Toe by Toe session. However, at the start of the next session, which is ideally the next day, You start again on page 13 and follow the same methodical process until every skill on this page has received the required 3 consecutive ticks. Please also note, if only 1 or 2 problem areas remain, i.e. every other skill has the required 3 consecutive ticks, in this example sh is unfinished, please draw a circle around sh and move it forward a couple of pages, right at the top of the page to be practiced later. This will then allow you to sign off the page as finished and never to be looked at again. You sign off the page with a flourish and say to the student what he wants to hear, what he's desperate to hear, which is very simple. You never have to look at this page again. In the early stages of toe by toe, your first task is to convince your struggling reader that this is something they can do. All the student has to do is to keep on finishing these pages one by one, and they'll get there. Here on page 15, we introduce vowel consonant and consonant vowel consonant combinations using the same procedure as on page 13. Please follow the instructions in the red coaching box on the facing page. So going down the first column, it will be af, ab, ag, ap, ad, av, ix, cam, lab, fab, bam. Here on page 19 we follow the same simple procedure, but this time we are using real words using the same skills. However, please note, in the shaded boxes at the bottom of each column we begin to introduce real words that are not phonetically consistent. English spelling is very inconsistent, of course, so we need a special technique to work on problematic words, which we will come to later. Here on page 23, we now use these skills in sentences. Students follow the words, underlining with a finger under the sentence as they read. If they make a mistake with a particular word, you underline it and ask them to repeat the correct sound 3 times. Students cannot receive a tick in the appropriate box until the whole sentence has been read correctly, so you will likely have to return to this page on subsequent days. The language used in toe by toe slowly increases in complexity as you move through the manual. As you can see here on page 33, we now introduce initial blends. So reading the first column, it will be flim, flen, griff, gref, swip, swep, brid, brod, crip, crup, frim, frem. As we can see here on page 45, we are now practicing the same skills, the initial blends, in real words. But please notice, in the shaded boxes at the bottom of each column, we start to introduce high-frequency, non-phonetic, problematic words. At this point in toe by toe, we have yet to introduce the mutee. So, using the skills already covered, the sound of the words in the shaded boxes would be somme, lager, thuse, and she. Now, even a highly dyslexic child has probably seen SHE so many times and heard it linked to the sound she that they know that that says she, but we have to be sure, we have to check. And so she will require 3 consecutive ticks before we can accept that it's in the long-term memory. Every 20 pages or so in toe by toe, we have these pages of blank grids. And this is where we work on particularly problematic areas. So as you can see here in this example, we are working on these, who, and does. Yeah, these words are very problematic and they require a multisensory approach. Now, there are many ways to do this, but I'm just going to demonstrate a very, very simple way of doing this. So let's talk about who. Now, who causes immense problems for struggling readers because it does not look like it sounds. So what I recommend doing with a word like who is you say to your student, this word says who. I want you to say after me, who. And then say, okay, now say the word again. And this time I want you to trace the shape of that word in the air in front of you. Like this. What's it say? Who. What's it say? Who. And then you ask them to do that again with their eyes closed. So what's it say? Who. What's it say? Who. And you work on that word for maybe 1 minute. Nothing else, just eyes closed. What's it say? Who. What's it say? Who. And then you leave it. But at the start of the next session, which is ideally the next day, the first thing that you do is, before you start on that session, you go to the particular problem word that you've been working on, and you say, what does that say? If they know, fine, give it a tick. But if they don't know, you have to go through the process again. So eyes closed, what's it say? Who. What's it say? Who. And you work on that word until it gets the requisite 3 consecutive ticks. This is a very simple, effective way of getting these difficult words lodged in the long-term memory. On page 65, we introduce the vowel sounds. Now, toe by toe only talks about a short and a long vowel sound. So as you can see in the first column here, the short sound of the vowel A is A. The long sound of the vowel E is E. The short sound of the vowel I is I. The short sound of the vowel O is O. The long sound of the vowel U is U. Short sound of the vowel A is A. E, U, O, I, A. And in the third column, the sounds are ap, ape, ud, ood, at, ate, im, I'm, ob, ob, it. So now we practice the mute rule using nonsense words. So in the first column, the sounds that you are looking for are tomb, con, dees, pef, sid, nipe, lote, said, soat, lab, poff, moaf. So having practiced these vowel sounds, we now practice the mute rule using real words. So in the first column, of course, ride, pot, hope, yes, dole, fin, rat, sight, mate, loan, log, when. Notice again in the shaded box at the bottom, this is where we practice the non-phonetic words, when, over and bring. Here on page 73, we practice the mute rule in sentences. And we underline any mistakes to be worked on as detailed in the coaching box on the facing page. To introduce the unique syllable division used in toe by toe, we shall begin by applying the following rules. Find the first vowel and jump over the next letter, the consonant, and draw a line. Unless it's a twin consonant, i.e. the same consonant twice. In that case, you draw the line after the second consonant. And you never split these combinations, th, sh, ch, k, and ch. And we never split a mute from the rest of the word. So ed, it, un. As you can see in the first example column here, mich ohm, ip at ein, dif ach oaf, ship itch, chat itch, in fetch og, fram ill, such ope, dach frish ope, chon at ick, glap it back. These syllable division rules are introduced slowly in toe by toe. As you can see here on page 155, the first column should read Ban ash ein, Jus tach ip, Tish op mode, Nitch op ash, Rick ash on, Ob mitch oaf, Glib om ik, Dith ac oat, Vic am 8, Clip im own, Chat ox, Am ich ock, Ap od sich, Rock itch. If you're not sure about this, the audio answers are available on the Toe by Toe website at the links below. Here on page 121, the student practices simply drawing the lines in the first two columns, and then they practice reading the nonsense words in the third and fourth column. So for example, in the third column, it should be flex ip ode, ich ap slav tons, jap stander, in drab ing, and so on. A huge problem with English spelling is inconsistency. For example, double O has got two sounds, the short sound U and the long sound oo. So we say to the student, if you come across this combination in a sentence, say both sounds and see which sounds right. As you can see here on page 127, before they say the sound, the student has to think. Is it food or is it fud? Is it croon or is it crun? Toe by Toe teaches that there are two sounds for the vowel digraph written E and A. There's the short sound E and the long sound E. So as you can see in the first column here, we have pleasant, reaching, beads, tea, and so on. Unfortunately, the English written language is very difficult, and there are always exceptions to these rules. As you can see here, stake and break, meander, beatify, creative, real, and reality, and so on. Here on page 155, we introduce the vowel digraph A, as written an A followed by an I. At first glance, this may appear a daunting, difficult task, and you may not be sure that you can read these words correctly, never mind whether your student can read them. So what we're going to do is we're going to work on the syllable division, and then we'll come back to this page and hopefully the scales will have fallen from your eyes and you'll see just how to read these words using the toe by toe methods. The toe by toe syllable division. The first step is that you check that your student can recognize a vowel when they see one. So in the red coaching box here, you can see a sequence of letters, and all your student has to do is to say yes if it's a vowel or no if it's not. So in the example here, it's no, 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 yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, yes, no, and so on. Very simple. Even severely dyslexic students seldom have a problem with this, but we have to be sure because the role of the vowel is absolutely essential for what we're trying to achieve. So you make sure that your student can recognize a vowel when they see one, and then they have to decide where to draw the line. So as you can see here in this example, the first vowel is the E, so they jump over the next letter and they draw a line after the R. The next vowel is the I, so they draw a line after the N. The next vowel is the A, they draw a line after the D, then after the R, after the double L, and after the Z. You don't draw a line after the N because that would leave the G hanging in space at the end. So it would say, stin, ad, were, cull, es, ing. Notice, fight the tendency to recognize real words amongst all this nonsense. So some of you will have seen work, but we just have to apply the syllable division. So the line comes after the R, and then after the double L and the Z. Stin, ad, were, cull, es, ing. So sh, th, ch, and k cannot be divided, since they make a single sound. So, as you can see in the example here, The U is followed by a K, so you draw the line after the K. The I is followed by a Sh, so you draw a line after the H. The E is followed by a twin, so you're drawing a line after the second L. After the N, the Sh, the second F, the Ch, the N, and the Th sound. So in the blue box, where would you draw the lines here? The first vowel is the I, and that's followed by a Sh, so you draw it after the Sh sound. The next vowel is A, after the R, after the N, after the K sound, after the N, and after the N you have to find the next vowel, which is the A. You jump over the double D and you draw a line after the second D. So the sound here is ish, ar, un, dak, en, thrad, oop, or yoop. It doesn't matter whether you say oop or yoop, but it has to be the long vowel sound. The next stage is that we introduce these combinations, f and ch. Again, they make a single sound, so they cannot be divided. So where would you draw the lines here? The first vowel is the I, followed by a K, then after the R, after the Ch, after the F, after the D, after the R, after the T. Please note, the last syllable is own, so fight the tendency to recognise real words that only says one in isolation, 1, 2, 3. These vowel combinations, O, A and E, make a single sound, so they cannot be divided. So, as you can see in the example, the first vowel is E, so jump over the next letter and draw a line after the T, then after the Sh, after the D, after the N, after the L, after the N, after the F, after the Sh. You don't draw a line after the N, that'll leave the G hanging in space. So where would you draw the lines here? So the first vowel is the O sound, so after the G, then after the S, after the M, after the L, after the R, after the double D, and you don't draw a line after the P because that would leave the E hanging in space by itself. So the sound of this word is hogue, S, team, ale, sir, vode, ipe. So, going back to page 155, let's now try and read these nonsense words using the toe-by-toe syllable division. The first column would be mape at oi, bait ish, raid pate, ein peck pain a tog, en sake rip, aid ap ot, clen foch, tate poi, nain dope, log aid ing, top ein ing, mondale loy tail Notice, it is not necessary for your student to say mapetoy. We're not testing here for fluency. All that we're doing is we're testing that your student knows where the lines go and the sound that each bit makes. So mape at oi is fine. That's what we're looking for. In the next column it will be claif ing, teish ein, troy sate, and so on. I cannot overemphasize the importance of the toe-by-toe syllable division and the use of nonsense words. This is what makes toe-by-toe such a powerful tool. If you understand this, you understand toe-by-toe. Soft and hard sound of the letter G. Now, toe-by-toe teaches that there are two sounds for the letter G. There's the soft sound J and the hard guttural G. So the toe-by-toe rule is that if the G is followed by an E, an I, or a Y, then we use the soft sound J. If it's followed by A, O, U, or any consonant, then we use the hard sound G. Now this is very difficult for your struggling readers because they have to adopt a totally new technique. They have to look at the previous letter to know which vowel sound to use. So this is very difficult. So having introduced this rule, we then practice in nonsense words, as on page 185. So let's go down the third column this time. The sound would be mar, jik, 8, jur, ach, ing, ag, sob, germ, grib, en, ter, jur, tip, ode, sap, jin, 8, jur, min, ok, pal, gat, oaf, wat, jur, om, jur, kissed, pan, ter, gap, fe, rap, jur, tab, jik. Now, this is difficult, as I say, but notice one very important thing. This is page 185. This is 2/3 of the way through toe by toe. So by the time that your student has got to this page, they know they're finally getting a handle on this reading thing. And so their confidence will be soaring. And so even though it's difficult, and even though they may struggle, they know that all they've got to do is to keep on working away, keep finishing these pages one by one, and they're getting there. They are learning to read. Please note that Toe by Toe cannot teach rules applicable in every case. The written language is just too difficult. There are always exceptions. Toe by Toe is a simplification, but it's a simplification that works. Also, please note that the correct pronunciation of these sounds is the sounds used in your own speech community. I'm from the north of England, so my accent is from that area, but the correct sound, as I say, is from the region that you're living in. The sounds that we recommend using are on our website on page 13. If you have any further queries regarding the best way to use Toe by Toe, please don't hesitate to contact us at info@toe-by-toe.co.uk. By the time you have finished Toe by Toe, your student should be able to read virtually anything, and you will have changed that student's life. Having finished Toe by Toe, if spelling remains a problem, it usually does, then we also have a manual called Stairway to Spelling. If fluency and comprehension remain an issue, then we also have a manual called Stride Ahead. The details are on our website. All best wishes and good luck to you and your students. Thank you.